The laughter was not unkind, exactly. It was the laughter of tired people, men and women who had worked the same land for decades, and thought they had already learned everything the earth had left to teach them. When Maya Hargrove stood up at the family dinner table in late March and announced she wanted to convert the back 40 acres to sunflowers, her father set down his fork. Her Uncle Earl looked at the ceiling. Her older brother Dennis made a sound somewhere between a cough and a chuckle. Her mother, ever the diplomat, simply said, "That's an interesting idea, sweetheart." Maya was 24 years old and had just returned home to Hargrove Farm in rural Kansas after finishing an agricultural science degree at Kansas State. She had come back full of ideas, spreadsheets, and a quiet but fierce conviction that the farm her family had run for 3 generations was slowly dying, not from laziness or bad luck, but from a refusal to change. The numbers were bad. Anyone willing to look at them honestly could see that. Corn prices had been suppressed for years by overproduction across the Midwest. Input costs, seeds, fertilizer, fuel, kept rising. The Hargroves had taken out a second loan on the property 18 months earlier just to cover operating costs. Her father, Robert Hargrove, was 61 years old and had not taken a real day off in 11 years. He was the kind of man who did not complain, which meant the problem was worse than anyone said out loud. Maya had spent her final semester studying crop diversification and alternative revenue models for mid-sized family farms. She had written her thesis on the economic resilience of farms that incorporated oilseed crops alongside traditional grain operations. Sunflowers, she had found, were remarkably well suited to Kansas conditions, drought-tolerant, relatively low input, and increasingly in demand both for culinary oil and for the growing birdseed and snack market. More importantly, the back 40 was struggling with soil compaction and drainage issues that made it a poor performer for corn anyway. Sunflowers, with their deep taproots, could actually help rehabilitate the soil while generating income at the same time. The laughter was not the response she had prepared for. "Sunflowers are a hobby crop," her Uncle Earl said, not cruelly, just with the certainty of a man who had planted corn and wheat for 40 years, and could not imagine why anyone would do otherwise. "You see them along roadsides. You don't make a living on sunflowers." Her brother Dennis was more direct. "You've been in school for 4 years, and you want to turn us into a flower farm." Her father said nothing for a long moment. Then, "We'll think about it," which in Robert Hargrove's language usually meant no. Maya did not give up. She spent the following 2 weeks doing something smarter than arguing. She started asking questions. She called farmers in North Dakota and South Dakota, where sunflower cultivation was more established. She contacted 2 oilseed processing cooperatives operating within 150 miles of the farm. She reached out to a specialty food distributor in Kansas City who had been trying to source non-GMO confectionery sunflower seeds domestically and was struggling to find reliable supply. She came back to her father not with charts this time, but with a letter of interest from that distributor and a phone number. Her father made the call. He was on the phone for 40 minutes. When he came back inside, he did not say much. But 2 days later he told Maya she could have 20 acres, not 40, to try it. She took the 20 and got to work. The first season was not a triumph. It was not a disaster either, which in farming is sometimes the best you can hope for. There was a hailstorm in July that damaged about 1/3 of the crop. The harvest came in lighter than her optimistic projection, though it tracked close to her conservative one. The distributor purchased what she had at a price that, after inputs, left a modest but real profit, nothing that changed the farm's financial picture, but enough to prove the math was not imaginary. More importantly, the soil data from that first season was striking. The compaction readings on the sunflower acreage dropped measurably. Earthworm counts were up. The land that had been quietly exhausted was showing early signs of life. Her father looked at the numbers. He did not say he had been wrong. He said, "Let's go to 40 next year." The second year was different in almost every way. Maya had spent the winter building relationships with the co-op, with the distributor, with a second buyer she had found through an agricultural trade publication. She had also applied for and received a small USDA grant for diversification practices on working farms, which helped offset seed costs. She had switched to a higher-yielding confectionery variety based on what she had learned in year one, and she had timed the planning to avoid the worst of the hail risk window based on 10 years of local weather data she had pulled and analyzed herself. The summer of the second year was punishing. Kansas endured one of its driest stretches in recent memory. The corn across much of the county withered. Neighbors watched their yields collapse in real time. The Hargrove corn acreage took a significant hit, projected to come in at roughly 60% of a normal year, which on already thin margins was the kind of blow that made men sit quietly at kitchen tables at night doing arithmetic they did not want to do. When the final numbers were tallied at the end of harvest, the sunflower acreage had generated enough net income to offset most of the corn shortfall. The farm did not just survive the drought year. It broke even, and in a drought year, for a farm that had been in the red for the better part of a decade, breaking even felt like a miracle. Robert Hargrove sat down with Maya in the farm office on a Sunday afternoon in October, the field stripped and quiet outside the window, and he looked at the ledger for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "I owe you an apology." Maya told him he didn't. He said he did. He said he had spent 40 years thinking he knew this land, and he still had things to learn, and he was glad she had not let the laughter stop her. Uncle Earl, to his credit, came around too. At Thanksgiving that year, he told Maya in front of the whole family that she had been right, and he had been wrong, and that in his experience, those were words worth saying clearly rather than letting them sit unsaid. Maya's sister-in-law, who had quietly supported Maya from the beginning but stayed out of the arguments, squeezed her hand under the table. The farm is different now. Sunflowers cover 60 acres of the Hargrove property. The soil rehabilitation has been documented and cited in 2 regional agricultural extension reports as a model for sustainable diversification on drought-prone land. Maya has been asked to speak at 2 farm conferences. She is building a direct relationship with a cold press oil producer who wants to develop a branded Kansas sunflower oil, which could add another revenue stream within the next growing cycle. Her father has taken 3 full days off in the past year, more than in the previous decade combined. He says the farm feels lighter. He means financially. But sometimes, standing at the edge of a field in late summer, when the sunflowers are tall and turning their great heads toward the light in slow unison, he means something else too. Maya does not spend much time thinking about the laughter anymore. She spent enough time on it in the beginning, when it stung, when she lay awake at night turning her arguments over and over looking for the flaw everyone else seemed to see. But the arguments were not flawed. The laughter was just the sound of people afraid to hope, dressed up as wisdom. That is a forgivable thing. Fear wears many masks on a struggling farm. It wears the mask of tradition, of practicality, of experience. It takes a certain kind of courage to recognize fear for what it is, especially in yourself, and even more courage to let someone younger and less weathered show you a different way forward. Her father has that courage now. So does Earl. So slowly does Dennis. And the farm, the same farm that was one bad season away from being sold, is breathing again, field by golden field, all the way to the horizon. The sunflowers don't care either way. They just grow. They always were going to grow. The only question was whether anyone would give them the chance. Maya did. And the farm is still standing because of it, and so is she.